Hi friends, I'm Ethan, your host, and today I'm going to tell you a chilling story straight from Kathmandu, Nepal. This story will shock you. It's about how a man, once loved and admired, turned into something unimaginable, a devil hiding behind a mask, willing to destroy others for his own twisted happiness. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will make you question how well we really know the people around us. Now, let's begin with the Ashish Deula case. Kathmandu, a city where ancient temples stand side by side with neon-lit clubs, comes alive at night. Beneath the shadows of the Himalayas, the capital's nightlife pulses with energy, drawing in crowds of young people eager for escape, excitement, and indulgence. Among the music and flashing lights, one figure stands out, mysterious, wealthy, and impossible to ignore. They call him Sugar Daddy. Every weekend, he arrives at the city's most exclusive clubs, flanked by a small entourage. His face is never seen. Instead, he hides behind a mask, eerily crafted to resemble the face of an old man, with sagging skin and sunken eyes. The mask isn't just for show, it's a signature. Some say it's a joke, others call it unsettling, but no one dares question him directly. Wherever he goes, bottles are opened, bills are paid without hesitation, and strangers clamor for an invitation to his after-parties. For many, he represents the dream, a rich, eccentric man who can make your night unforgettable. Young men and women alike are drawn to him, lured by promises of free drinks, expensive gifts, and whispers of wild private gatherings hidden from the public eye. But beneath the glamorous facade, few knew who Sugar Daddy truly was. Behind the mask was Ashish Deula, a 33-year-old man whose story was more complicated than anyone could imagine. A few years earlier, Ashish wasn't a masked figure lurking in the nightlife. He was a familiar face online, a popular content creator who built his fame through prank videos on social media. His pranks, often daring and controversial, earned him both fans and critics. While some laughed, others felt his jokes crossed ethical lines. But Ashish thrived on the attention. For a time, he was a rising star in Kathmandu's digital scene, enjoying the thrill of internet fame. But everything changed in 2020 when tragedy struck his family. His father, a respected businessman with multiple ventures under his name, fell victim to the COVID-19 pandemic. Within weeks, Ashish's father passed away, leaving behind a sizable fortune and a son whose life was about to take a darker turn. The loss shattered Ashish's public presence. He vanished from social media, deleting old posts and stepping away from the online world that once celebrated him. For over a year, he remained out of sight. Then, as the world began recovering from the pandemic, Ashish returned, not as a prankster, but as a shadowy figure in Kathmandu's nightlife. He no longer sought laughter or followers. Instead, he embraced a persona cloaked in mystery and power, using his inheritance to fund extravagant parties and surround himself with people eager to benefit from his wealth. The mask became his shield, his symbol, and for those around him, an unspoken warning. No one really knew the man behind it. But as the nights wore on and the parties grew wilder, whispers began to spread. Stories that suggested the man in the mask wasn't just playing a role. Something far more sinister lurked beneath. At first, the rumors were easy to ignore. In a city where nightlife blurred into early mornings and hangovers stretched into forgotten memories, it wasn't unusual for someone to disappear for a day or two. Friends would joke about losing a buddy to a wild night, or a secret fling, or a long binge. But as weeks passed, the stories stopped being funny. In Kathmandu's youth circles, whispers grew louder, stories of young men and women who had been invited to the private parties thrown by the masked man, only to vanish afterward. They left clubs in his cars, smiling and excited, eager for the promises of luxury and adventure. But when morning came, their phones went silent. Their social media stayed quiet. Some didn't return for days. When they finally came back, something was different. A few showed up with bruises on their arms and faces, dark marks hidden beneath sleeves and scarves. They offered no explanations. Friends asked questions, but the answers were always the same. A shrug, a forced smile, a quick change of subject. Others refused to talk at all, as if fear itself had sealed their mouths. One name kept surfacing among the rumors: Kul Bahadur. A popular figure in the city's party scene, Kul was known for his boldness and charm. But after one night out at a club where the masked man had appeared, Kul vanished. For 4 days, no one knew where he was. His phone rang unanswered. His apartment remained untouched. Panic spread among his friends, who feared the worst. Then, on the 4th night, Kul was found. He stumbled into a friend's home in the early hours of the morning, disheveled and terrified. His hands trembled as he tried to speak, but the words came out broken, disconnected. His body bore fresh wounds, bruises across his back, faint burns on his chest, and thin cuts around his wrists. When pressed for answers, Kul only whispered, "Don't ask. Please don't ask." The news of Kul's condition spread quickly through the underground circles. Fear replaced excitement whenever the masked man's name was mentioned. What had once been seen as a ticket to luxury now felt like a gamble with fate. People began to avoid the invitations, even if it meant missing out on the city's most lavish parties. Behind the scenes, someone had grown concerned enough to act. An anonymous tip reached the Kathmandu police, claiming a connection between the disappearances and the private parties hosted by the man behind the mask. The tip spoke of strange noises from inside his residence, of people entering but not leaving until days later, often carried out instead of walking. With little concrete evidence but growing fear, authorities quietly began to watch the man known as Sugar Daddy. The mask that once symbolized fun and excess now hid something darker, something the city's youth could no longer ignore. The whispers had turned into warnings. In the heart of Kathmandu, the legend of the masked man was no longer just a story told over drinks. It had become a chilling reality few dared to confront. The truth behind Kul Bahadur's disappearance slowly unraveled, piece by piece, like a nightmare too horrifying to believe. At first, Kul refused to speak. Fear clung to him like a shadow, making him flinch at sudden noises, jump at the ring of a phone. But as the pressure from worried friends and family mounted, and as the rumors spread wider, he finally broke his silence. His voice trembled as he spoke, reliving each moment as if trapped in a loop he couldn't escape. That night, Kul had been thrilled to receive a personal invitation from Ashish Deula, the masked man himself. The promise of an exclusive party at Ashish's private residence was an offer no one refused. He remembered arriving at the lavish house, where the music was low, the guests few, and the atmosphere strangely intimate. Drinks flowed, stronger than usual. Kul's memories blurred after the second glass. Then, darkness. When he awoke, he wasn't in a guest room or on a couch. He was tied to a metal chair, wrists and ankles bound so tightly that the ropes dug into his skin. The room was cold, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. And there, standing across from him, was Ashish, still wearing the unsettling old man mask, even though no one else was there to see it. Kul described what followed in halting whispers. Ashish approached him with a small metal rod, heating it until it glowed red. Without a word, he pressed it against Kul's bare chest. The skin sizzled, the pain blinding. Kul screamed, but no one came. Ashish only watched, his breathing calm, his movements slow and deliberate. Then came the nails. Ashish drove them into Kul's hands, one by one, using a small hammer. The sound of metal piercing flesh echoed in Kul's ears long after. All the while, a camera recorded from the corner of the room. Ashish leaned into the lens, whispering threats, promises of even worse if Kul dared speak to anyone. Kul's confession sent chills through those who heard it. But he wasn't the only one. Days later, Vishal Paudel stepped forward, his face pale, his eyes hollow. His story mirrored Kul's. Invited, drugged, restrained, tortured with heated rods, left bleeding and broken near a riverbank, uncertain if he'd been meant to survive. Both men recalled the same haunting detail, Ashish's terrifying calmness. He never raised his voice, never showed anger. Whether burning skin or driving nails, he performed each act as if it were routine. And even in those private moments, with no audience but his victims, he never removed the mask. Behind the old man's face was something far more monstrous. The mask wasn't hiding him from the world. It was shielding the world from what he had become. Behind the mask, behind the luxury cars and whispered rumors, lay the complicated story of Ashish Deula, a man shaped by privilege, fame, and quiet tragedy. Born into one of Kathmandu's wealthiest families, Ashish grew up surrounded by opulence. His father, a powerful businessman with interests spanning real estate, imports, and entertainment, ensured his only son never lacked for anything. From expensive toys as a child to high-end gadgets as a teen, Ashish's world was paved in gold. But wealth wasn't enough for him. In his early 20s, he craved something more than money: attention. That hunger led him to the internet, where he quickly gained popularity as a prankster. His social media channels exploded with followers, drawn to his outrageous stunts and daring content. Ashish thrived on pushing boundaries, staging pranks that teetered between funny and cruel. It wasn't long before his antics sparked backlash. Videos surfaced of pranks targeting unsuspecting strangers in humiliating ways. Elderly shopkeepers harassed for laughs. Poor vendors tricked out of their day's earnings. Friends betrayed for online clout. Complaints followed. Sponsors distanced themselves. His once loyal fans turned critical. Ashish responded by doubling down, making his pranks even more extreme, until platforms began to flag and remove his content. Then, in 2020, tragedy struck. His father fell gravely ill during the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite every medical effort, he passed away, leaving Ashish the sole heir to the family's vast fortune. The loss silenced him. Ashish vanished from the public eye, shuttering his channels, deleting posts, and retreating from the world. For over a year, no one saw or heard from him. When he finally resurfaced, he wasn't the same man. Gone was the prankster chasing likes and views. In his place stood a figure draped in mystery, a man who wore a mask not for anonymity, but for identity. He began hosting private gatherings in his sprawling residence, inviting only select circles from Kathmandu's elite nightlife. The parties were extravagant, filled with imported liquor, designer drugs, and whispered promises of anything one desired. At first, it seemed harmless, just another rich man's playground. But beneath the surface, an unsettling energy flowed. Guests spoke of strange requests, of games that crossed lines, of moments where fun turned into discomfort. Lavish gifts were given freely: expensive watches, rare sneakers, gold jewelry, but always with invisible strings attached. Ashish no longer sought the world's approval. He no longer needed an audience of millions. He had built his own private kingdom, where rules bent at his will, where pleasure and pain blurred until neither could be told apart. And through it all, he remained hidden behind that eerie mask, a relic of an old man's face masking the twisted life of the young heir underneath. As whispers turned into testimonies and rumors hardened into evidence, the walls around Ashish Deula began to close in. The stories from Kul Bahadur and Vishal Paudel had been just the beginning. In the weeks that followed, more victims, young men and women, stepped forward, each carrying their own scars, each with a harrowing account of what had happened behind the locked doors of Ashish's private gatherings. They spoke of the same chilling details: the drugs slipped into their drinks, the cold basement with its metallic smell, the burning pain of heated irons pressed against their skin. Some remembered the eerie silence during their torment, broken only by the hum of recording equipment. Others recalled Ashish's mask staring at them, unmoving, as he inflicted pain with an unnerving calmness. Each testimony painted a clearer picture, and the authorities could no longer ignore what was unfolding beneath the glamorous surface of Kathmandu's nightlife. The Kathmandu Metropolitan Police formed a special task force, gathering surveillance footage, tracing calls, and piecing together the last known locations of the victims. patterns emerged, all leading to the same place. A sprawling mansion in Budinal-Kantha, nestled away from the crowded heart of the city. One late evening, under the cover of darkness, a police convoy surrounded the residence. Armed officers moved swiftly, breaching the gates and storming inside. What they found chilled even the most hardened investigators. Inside the basement, they discovered an array of disturbing items. An old electric iron, its surface blackened from repeated heating. Metal rods, some with charred ends. A collection of masks hung on the wall, including the now infamous old man's mask. Cameras and recording equipment were neatly arranged around the room, with wires snaking toward a central monitor. Stains marked the floor, remnants of untold suffering. Hidden compartments revealed more. Syringes, ropes, and handwritten notes detailing each victim's ordeal. It wasn't just torture, it was systematic, organized, and recorded. Ashish was found upstairs in a private lounge, sipping whiskey as if unaware or unconcerned about the chaos unfolding below. Alongside him were three associates, Rajendra Gale, Ojashri Tamang, and Sajan Guru. All were swiftly taken into custody without resistance. Their expressions ranged from shock to eerie calm, mirroring their leader's unsettling detachment. As they were led out in handcuffs, the flashing lights of media cameras illuminated their faces. The masked man of Kathmandu had been unmasked at last, but what lay beneath, the city was only beginning to comprehend. The arrest of Ashish Deula sent a tremor through the heart of Kathmandu. By morning, his masked face was plastered across every news channel, social media feed, and newspaper headline. The man once known for lavish parties and wild generosity had been unmasked as something far darker. In the clubs and bars where Ashish had once been a legend, whispers turned into gasps. Club owners, bartenders, and regular partygoers struggled to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the monster now dominating headlines. They spoke of his extravagant spending, how he tipped waitstaff with gold chains, bought strangers entire bottles of imported liquor, and arrived in sleek cars flanked by unknown companions. He was eccentric, sure, said one club manager. Always wore that weird old man mask, but we thought it was part of his vibe, just a rich guy playing mysterious. Nobody imagined this. Party circles were filled with uneasy confessions. Some remembered being invited to his private mansion, but declining at the last minute. Others now looked back at unsettling moments. Glimpses of rooms guests weren't allowed to enter, sudden disappearances of mutual friends, vague explanations that fell off but were quickly dismissed under the haze of nightlife. Across the city, a collective sense of disbelief gave way to outrage. How had this gone unnoticed? How had someone so visible managed to hide such cruelty in plain sight? At the Kathmandu District Court, crowds gathered as Ashish and his three associates, Rajendra Gale, Ojashri Tamang, and Sajan Guru, were brought in under heavy security. Photographers jostled for position as the accused were led inside, their faces stony and unreadable. Inside the courtroom, Ashish sat motionless, his hands clasped together, his gaze fixed forward. No hint of emotion crossed his face as the charges were read aloud. Kidnapping, illegal detention, attempted murder, conspiracy to commit grievous harm. Then came the voices of the victims. Kul Bahadur, his hands trembling, took the stand and recounted his 4-day nightmare. The drugs, the iron burns, the pain he thought would never end. Vishal Paudel followed, describing the heated rods, the masked man's chilling silence, and the night he was dumped, broken and bleeding, near a riverbank. Each testimony sent fresh ripples of anger and sorrow across the city. Listeners in the courtroom wiped away tears. Others clenched their fists in quiet rage. Outside, crowds watched live updates on their phones, their disbelief replaced by a growing demand for justice. Kathmandu had admired the masked man's wealth and charisma for years. Now, it saw him for what he truly was, and the city would never look at him the same way again. As the legal process unfolded, attention turned from Ashish's actions to the deeper question haunting Kathmandu. Why? Behind the crimes, behind the old man's mask, what kind of mind had orchestrated such cruelty? A panel of psychiatrists and forensic psychologists was assigned to evaluate Ashish Deula while he awaited trial. Their findings painted a portrait as unsettling as the crimes themselves. He exhibited clear signs of sadistic tendencies, not just a willingness to hurt others, but a deliberate, calculated enjoyment of it. According to reports, Ashish derived satisfaction from the control, from watching his victims beg, from deciding exactly how much pain to inflict and when to stop. He didn't lash out in anger, one psychologist noted. He orchestrated suffering like an artist shaping his work. His pleasure wasn't random, it was methodical. Despite his outward image as a wild party figure, a curious contradiction emerged from interviews and investigations. Ashish himself abstained from alcohol and meat, even while surrounding his guests with overflowing drinks and lavish meat dishes at his private parties. He controlled the environment meticulously, ensuring others indulged while he remained a detached observer, never breaking his own rigid rules. It wasn't about sharing excess, another expert explained. It was about control. He watched others lose their inhibitions, while he maintained total command over his own. This strict self-discipline stood in stark contrast to the chaotic debauchery he orchestrated for others. Investigators believed it was part of a deeper pattern. Ashish created a world where he was both the provider and the ruler, the unseen hand shaping others' experiences while remaining apart. Debate stirred among professionals and the public alike. Was this the unraveling of a man crushed by grief and isolation after his father's death? Or had the seeds of cruelty always been there, nurtured quietly beneath the surface of privilege and fame? Some pointed to his earlier years as a prankster, where his videos often pushed ethical boundaries. They wondered if the mask had simply been the next evolution, a tool that freed him from consequence, that allowed him to dissociate from the acts he committed while hiding in plain sight. The mask itself became a symbol of chilling fascination. Psychologists speculated it served a dual purpose, anonymity and authority. By obscuring his face, Ashish could simultaneously erase his identity and amplify his dominance, reducing his victims to powerless participants beneath an impassive, ageless visage. As the court awaited final psychological reports, one truth became clear. The man behind the mask was not simply a monster of impulse, but one of intention and control, who had built his kingdom of pain by choice, not chance. With Ashish Deula and his 3 accomplices held securely in custody, Kathmandu's bustling city life continued, but beneath it ran an undeniable current of fear. The case, once whispered about in hushed tones at clubs and coffee shops, had become an open wound for the city's youth. The man who once dazzled partygoers with his wealth and mystery was now a symbol of betrayal, and the nightlife he once ruled felt hollow, fragile, and tainted. As prosecutors prepared their case, police quietly expanded their investigation. Each day brought new rumors, new anonymous messages, and fresh leads hinting that Ashish's crimes might have gone deeper than anyone had imagined. Detectives suspected there were more victims, young men and women too frightened, too ashamed, or too traumatized to step forward. Some feared retaliation, others feared the stigma, unwilling to be known as survivors of Ashish's private hell. A senior investigator admitted, "We believe there are victims who still haven't spoken. The patterns, the logistics, the timeline, there are gaps. We're still piecing it together." The house in Budinal-Kantha stood silent, sealed off by yellow tape, a grim reminder of what had been uncovered within. But for many, the house was no longer the only place marked by dread. Bars, lounges, and late-night venues across the city felt eerily subdued in the months following the arrest. Music still played, drinks still flowed, but something had changed. Groups gathered closer together. Conversations dropped to whispers when a stranger approached, and glances lingered a little longer on anyone wearing a mask or behaving oddly. No one sure who to trust anymore, a regular clubgoer confessed. If someone like Ashish could do this, someone we all saw, laughed with, partied with, who else is out there? The nightlife dimmed, Not because people stayed home, but because they carried a new kind of caution with them. Behind every charming smile, behind every outstretched hand offering a drink or an invite, there lurked a silent question. What lies beneath? As the trial date approached, Kathmandu grappled with a darker truth. Evil didn't always look monstrous. Sometimes it wore designer clothes. Sometimes it bought you champagne. Sometimes it danced beside you, grinning behind a mask. And as the city's lights flickered under the weight of those realizations, one chilling thought remained. Ashish was caught, but how many others like him were still out there, hiding their darkness beneath charm, wealth, and a well-crafted disguise? The story didn't end with his arrest. It left behind a lingering fear, a cautionary tale echoing in every corner of Kathmandu's glittering but shadowed nights.